As promised, here is the follow-up to my story explain video on Fallout New Vegas. In this one, we'll be looking at the lore behind the vaults of New Vegas, or should I say, the vaults of the Mojave. I won't be going into the original origins of the vaults and Vault-Tec's goals, as I've already covered that in my Vaults of Fallout 3 video, but in summary, Vault-Tec created these vaults to be human experiments, or you could say social experiments, survival of the fittest. I'm not going to waffle on too much, so we're going to dive straight in, but please be aware that before continuing on, there will be spoilers in this video for Fallout New Vegas and some of the DLCs too. Alright, so let's begin with Vault 3. Vault 3 was considered a control vault, and what this meant was that a vault was run, well, according to its purpose, to sustain human life in the event of global nuclear destruction. The vault itself did well, it thrived, and that wasn't until the 2200s when a water leak sprang inside the vault, flooding the entire lower area of the vault. This forced the vault dwellers to open the vault up in order to seek help from the unknown, the outside world. Exiting, they realized that everything was okay. They began trading with the surrounding communities. But this good fortune only lasted a couple of weeks. A gang of chem-addicted raiders known as fiends would show up, desperate for things to steal and sell so that they could feed their chem habit. The fiends rather cunningly blagged their way into the vault and turned on the vault dwellers, killing them all and taking the vault for themselves. And this was now the fiends' new hideout. In reality, the fiends were at war with a militia called the West Side Militia, who were led by Clayton Etienne and Tom Anderson. They also have a super mutant loyal to them called Mean Son of a Bitch, who has claimed the lives of many of the fiends' gang. The fiends' leader, Motor Runner, helped the fiends stay safe inside the vault. Because of their impenetrable vault hideout, the fiends were able to terrorize the surrounding communities of New Vegas and the communities of the New California Republic. They'd even built a cell and would kidnap and imprison people from the surrounding communities inside the vault. The NCR would put out hit contracts on notorious fiend members such as Violet, Cook, and Driver Nephi, all high-ranking members. The courier can choose to complete these contracts for the NCR, and doing so severely weakens the fiends. The courier can then go to Vault 3 with a contract to take out the final fiend, their leader, Motor Runner. Time to dive into probably the most disturbing and messed up Vault-Tec experiment in the Fallout series. Vault 11. Whilst exploring the central mountain region of the Mojave, the courier can come across a vault which is hidden within a hollowed out rock. Vault 11's purpose was an experiment that would determine the vault dwellers' willingness to sacrifice a member of their vault every year in order to ensure the future and survival of their vault. To coerce them into doing this, the vault dwellers of Vault 11 were led to believe that they would be killed by the vault's mainframe if an annual sacrifice was not offered up, so something messed up would happen over the next couple of decades. Of course, the first Overseer knew all about the Vault's true purpose. The Vault dwellers weren't happy about deception, and naturally they chose him as the first sacrifice. Annual Overseer elections would then be held to determine who the next Overseer or sacrifice should be, and naturally the candidates had to do everything they could in order to convince their fellow Vault dwellers why they should not be elected. Voting blocks emerged, and these blocks would attempt to influence voting, and this included the creation of propaganda and flyers which would be plastered all over the vault. The elected Overseer would then, at the end of their term, open up the passageway underneath the Overseer's office and would then die a horrible death. This process of elections would continue for years until something changed in 2093. The voting system was overhauled, and the 6 voting blocks named the Allied Service Workers Block, the Divine Will Block, the Human Dignity Block, the Justice Block, the United Vault Technicians Block, and the Utilitarian Block came together and formed a coalition, creatively naming it the Coalition of Vault 11 Voting Blocks. Then came the person that would become the last Overseer of Vault 11. Now, as expected, corruption grew under this new coalition of voting blocks, and the leader of the most powerful block, the Justice Block, Roy Gottlieb, had a personal beef with a man named Nathan Stone and was seriously considering nominating him to be the new Overseer. This beef stemmed from the fact that Nathan was on a hot streak after winning many games of poker, and Roy wanted Nathan dealt with. But Roy was a twisted bloke. He forced Nathan's wife Catherine into having sexual relations with him, and she went along with it as a means of saving her husband's life, as the Justice Block, being as influential as they were, would pretty much ensure that Nathan would be elected. But another shocking thing was that Catherine wasn't just forced to sleep with Roy, but with all the Justice Block members and their friends. After the Justice Block chose Nathan anyway, Catherine went on a killing spree and murdered members of the block. Her retribution. She went on trial, and as expected, Catherine was elected as the new overseer in Nathan's place. Catherine immediately got to work. She enacted something called Overseer Order 745, and this brought an end to the elections themselves. Instead, a computer would choose the next overseer at random. And this made it fair, but this didn't sit well with what remained of the Justice Bloc at all, since they themselves could be elected. And also they feared losing their power and influence over the people, so they plotted.
She can't do this. It's done. We're done. Nothing's done. She's got the authority. The only thing she can't do is change her own fate. Nothing says she can't change the selection process for future overseers. I say she can't. You shouldn't have toyed with her like that, Roy. We still have the majority. We don't vote for anything anymore. I'm not talking about voting. What then? You want to have a sit-in? A hunger strike? Not exactly. Maybe march into her office with torches and pitchforks? Yes. Come on. I mean it. What? Start a revolution? Laws don't outlast their governments. Roy, all we have to do is wait until someone from Justice Bloc gets picked for overseer. Then we have them change the law back. There won't be any blocks after the new overseer is picked tomorrow. Everyone's going to move on. By the time we've reformed, who knows if we'll still be in the majority? We can hold the block together. You don't know that. Besides, what if the computer picks you? What if it picks me? And your solution is to start shooting? Not if we don't have to. Look, we arm up. We go to the lower floors, take some strategic targets. Power, food, water. Just until she turns authority over to us. The other blocks won't support it. They're tired of us having the power. We have the majority. We don't need them. This isn't a vote, Roy. They'll fight back. They've never had the nerve. Hell of a way to test it.
A fight broke out in Vault 11 as a result of the Justice Bloc's attempted coup, and it was so bloody that only 5 people survived. These 5 people had had enough and went into the sacrificial chamber underneath the Overseer's office and confronted the mainframe. They refused to carry out any more sacrifices. But then, a message played out.
Congratulations, citizens of Vault 11. You have made the decision not to sacrifice one of your own. You can walk with your head held high, knowing that your commitment to human life is a shining example to us all. And to make that feeling of pride even sweeter, I have some exciting news. Despite what you were led to believe, the population of Vault 11 is not going to be exterminated for its disobedience. Instead, the mechanism to open the main vault door has now been enabled, and you can come and go at your leisure. But not so fast. Be sure to check with your overseer to find out if it's safe to leave. Here at Vault-Tec, your safety is our #1 priority.
Devastated and realizing that they didn't even need to carry out all these sacrifices, the 5 remaining Vault dwellers discussed what they should do next.
Are we really gonna do this? It's open. We could just leave.
I couldn't. Not after that.
We don't deserve to leave. A shining example. That's what it called us. But we were. We did what we were supposed to. Not by a long shot. Anybody would have done what we did.
You ask me? That's exactly the problem. Now let's get on with this.
I'll go first. Wait. People should know what happened. They could learn from it. If there's anyone out there at all, I hope they never have to find out. Ready, Harry? Yeah. No, wait!
Now there was one apparent lone survivor, but it's not explained what happened to this survivor, but that is the messed up story of Vault 11. In an area teeming with fire geckos, the courier can come across the entrance to Vault 19. Inside the vault they encountered 2 people of interest, 2 former convicts who broke out of the NCR correctional facility. Samuel Cook, the man who led the Powder Gang's escape from the prison, and Philip Lem, a thief who escaped with Cook and many other convicts. Their reason for being in prison is not important, but the 2 are at odds. We'll get to the reason as to why shortly. Vault 19 was unlucky enough to be chosen to contain yet another human experiment: segregation. This was designed to induce severe paranoia into the residents. The vault was actually split into two sides, red and blue, each with its own overseer. Now, it's unclear as to how this was carried out, but one terminal entry written by a young child details how they, and other children, were hearing high-pitched noises. A doctor for the vault, who was a neutral, neither red nor blue, saw patients who claimed to be hearing things too. And in terminal entries, it seems that the blues suspected that the reds were creeping around and were up to something, and vice versa. Suspicions of spying and plotting were common. One blue vault dweller even considered the lights flickering in the hallway to be the reds communicating via Morse code. Another dweller found a sunset sarsaparilla blue star bottle cap and thought it could be the reds' attempt at mind control. The residents then gained access to the doctor's terminal, and they assumed that she'd been drugging them. They noticed that they were getting headaches after air was being blasted through the vents for 5 minutes at a time. Truth is that the people responsible for these things were not the vault dwellers, but the two overseers who were being directed by Vault-Tec themselves as they were observing the experiment. The vault itself was actually located on top of some sulfur caves. This was the cause of the headaches that the vault dwellers thought was the opposite side poisoning them. The sulfur was leaking into the ventilation system, and obviously this only made their paranoia grow. The vault dwellers likely ended up killing each other or were killed by the fire geckos. The geckos inhabit the sulfur caves, and part of the vault have collapsed as well, but that's pretty much all we know about the vault. In terms of the reason why Cook and Lem are at odds, well, basically Cook wants to stay in the vault, and this is because the sulfur deposits in the caves can be helpful to him, as he can use the sulfur to make bombs. Lem, however, believes that they won't survive long in the vault and should turn themselves over to the NCR. The courier has a choice. He can either clear out the fire geckos for Cook and Lem, but where it differs is that the courier can help Cook by just clearing out the geckos, but can blow up the caves containing the sulfur deposits, blocking access to them and forcing them to leave the vault, as there's no reason for them to be there anymore. The courier can also convince them to join the Grey Khans or surrender to the NCR. Okay, so Vault 21 was located in downtown Las Vegas. Its experiment was a strange one, but one that was in keeping with its locale. You see, all of the residents were treated as equals, and as the number of the vault suggests, any disputes or disagreements were resolved through gambling. The winner of the game, who would be a chosen representative, would be the winner of the disagreement. Issues were essentially being solved through chance. During their time in the Vault 21 vault dwellers were contacted out of the blue by Mr. House, who, remember, had used his considerable influence and technology to ensure that Las Vegas was largely untouched by the nuclear bombs that rained down on America in 2077. He was to rebuild Vegas and offered the vault dwellers a chance to be included in his vision. A lot of the residents were unconvinced, and other residents wanted to accept the offer. So, as explained earlier, this conundrum meant one thing: a high-stakes game of blackjack. The representative of the residents who wanted to accept the offer won, of course, and ventured outside the vault. Mr. House then ordered the entire vault to be filled with concrete. A woman named Sarah Weintraub put the idea to Mr. House that she would like to establish a hotel in the vault to offer an authentic vault experience. So House allowed her to use the upper levels whilst filling the lower levels with concrete as planned. One of the vault dwellers who resettled in the Mojave was Doc Mitchell, who resides in Good Springs and who treated the courier after they were shot in the head and left for dead by Benny. Speaking of Benny, this leads us on to House's motive for sealing off the vault. If Benny flees during his and the courier's meeting in the Tops Casino, an elevator leads to a sub-basement which leads to Vault 21. The Vault 21 network actually leads to the Lucky 38, and if you've played the story, Benny wanted to get into the Lucky 38 with the Platinum chip in order to upload Yes Man onto the mainframe. Explosives left behind even support that fact. Therefore, House did manage to restrict Benny's access to the Lucky 38, but it was more likely that he didn't want anyone knowing about or using this hidden tunnel network. But that's pretty much it for Vault 21. Vault 22 is a little bit different. This vault was not designed to house a civilian population, instead it was home to crop experimentation. This was an experiment carried out prior to the Great War and was a way to try and combat potential global hunger. Despite the war and global destruction in '77, the scientists inside the vault continued their work and research. They instead looked at how to build on their vault population using the plants as a way to sustain themselves. Different crops and plants would be donated to Vault 21's researchers, but one of these donations contained a rather sinister potential. It was called Bavaria mordicana. It was a fungus. It was actually developed at the Big MT, the Big Mountain Research Facility, at the X22 Botanical Garden, and it was shared with, you guessed it, Vault-Tec. The researchers at Big MT and Vault-Tec knew that this fungus possessed the capability of infecting human subjects, as they had a subject at X22, referred to as Patient Zero. They discovered that the body which was dead had been taken over by the fungus, and the fungus had taken control of the body. Back in the vault, the scientists and researchers had pretty much been condemned thanks to this fungus. The spores from the fungus spread through the vault, and the first to be infected was a scientist named Dr. Harrison Peters, who went on to document his symptoms. After it had entered the lungs of the subject, chills, fever, and a horrible cough would follow soon after. The subject would then succumb to organ failure. As with Patient Zero, the body would then reanimate and would become what was known as a spore carrier, and these spore carriers would spread more spores and infect more people. It didn't take long for this infection to spread through the vault. The vault dwellers attempted to get rid of the problem by igniting gas in the lower levels, but this did not work, and leftover survivors of the vault would eventually be forced out and would leave, fleeing to Zion Canyon. This was seen through Deadeye Ricky in the Honest Hearts DLC, who was wearing both a Pip-Boy and a Vault 21 jumpsuit, and falsely claimed to be a surviving member of the Vault. Anyway, the survivors would eventually end up massacring a load of Mexican refugees, but most of the Vault survivors, if not all of them, were infected by the fungus as they developed an aggressive cough, as documented by a former US soldier, Randall Clark. Many of the Vault 22 survivors died as a result of infection. When the carrier happens upon the Vault, it's overgrown, overrun by plant life. The spore carriers would infect many other people who entered the Vault, creating more carriers. The NCR's Office of Science and Industry would send a ghoul named Keely to investigate the vault, but she got trapped there. The courier can help her out by obtaining non-harmful samples and by igniting a gas leak in the vault, destroying the remaining spores inside. But now onto the final vault. Vault 34 contained another social experiment, and this one was to overstock the vault with weapons and ammo. The vault was fine, until it started to become overpopulated. Naturally, having the vault so heavily stocked with ways the residents could murder one another, the Overseer at the time installed a lock on the armory. Naturally, and true to the Overseer's fears, the residents demanded access to the armory in the interest of being able to defend themselves. This led to riots, and a large group of residents gained access to the armory. This group then left the vault and settled at Nellis Air Force Base, where they would become known as the Boomers. The Boomers would detail their history via a mural on the wall at the base. Another one of the people who left the vault was a man named Chris Havison, a man who, due to his many trips to tinker with the vault's reactor, believed he would become a ghoul because of the radiation he'd absorbed. But he got laughed at and ridiculed by his fellow vault dwellers for this notion. However, he didn't go to the Air Force Base with the Boomers, he instead joined up with a cult of ghouls called the Bright Brotherhood, led by Jason Bright. He was laughed at by them too, but behind his back. He believed that he was becoming a ghoul, but was very much human. He would assist the Bright Brotherhood in their attempts to fly into space using the rockets at the Repcon test site. But, back in the vault, things were about to kick off. The Overseer, in an attempt to prevent anyone else from leaving, put armed guards on the exits, effectively making it seem to the residents that they were now living under a dictatorship. It didn't help that population control was a priority now, and this led to a coup. But this didn't serve its intended purpose, as the rioters damaged key infrastructure such as the vault's reactor, along with the vault's mainframe. A team of scientists and engineers attempted to fix the reactor, but this failed. The radiation levels inside the vault would reach high levels because of the damaged reactor, and everyone inside would become ghoulified by the rads. The massive amounts of radiation also affected nearby NCR cropper farms, as it was spreading into the ground around the farms. But that is pretty much it for the vaults of the Mojave. These ones were pretty enjoyable to explore and uncover the lore for. Some of these were pretty messed up, but my favourite one to uncover was Vault 11 and the Overseer Election Sacrifices. Let me know your favourite vault from Fallout New Vegas down in the comments below. Now I'm going to get cracking on Fallout 4, there's lots to explore. If you enjoyed this little dive into the lore behind the vaults from Fallout New Vegas, then please leave a like on the video and subscribe if you aren't already. But for now, take care, and I will see you in the next one.